Hey folks, welcome to Fans of Monsters Radio. Now, tonight we head into Ohio, a state with a long and deeply unsettling history of unexplained encounters. Rivers, rail yards, forests, farm roads, and suburban neighborhoods all become part of the same pattern. A pattern filled with humanoids, upright canines, winged entities, strange intruders, and creatures that witnesses still struggle to describe years later. Now, some of these reports are frightening because of what was seen. Others are frightening because of how the witnesses reacted, the dread, the nausea, the paralysis, the sense that something intelligent was present and aware of them. These are the kinds of cases that stay with people, and tonight we're going to walk through them one by one. So we begin in Loveland, Ohio, an area already tied to one of the state's best-known legends. But this account is not a recycled story from decades past. This is a modern witness report set near the Little Miami River, where there are strange stone formations, disturbing animal-like sounds, and a terrifying late-night confrontation built towards something the witnesses had never forgotten. Now, Jack T. had been living in a small, aging cabin on Davis Road in Loveland, Ohio, sharing the place with a friend. A narrow creek ran beside the property and fed directly into the Little Miami River, only a short distance away. Now, from the moment he moved in late summer 2013, the area felt different, as if something unseen were already nearby. Now, while exploring the creek, Jack began to notice carefully stacked stone towers in the shallow water and along the banks. Now, these formations appeared deliberately placed rather than randomly deposited by flowing water. Now, what unsettled him most was that the stacks never stayed the same. He would return the next day to find them shifted, rearranged, or multiplied in new locations. Now, at first, he tried to rationalize it as an erosion or shifting water, but the pattern suggested intent. With the rearrangements came an unnerving sensation of being watched. Now, as autumn progressed, strange sounds began drifting through the surrounding woods. Now, at first, they were distant, like animals fighting or crying out in distress. There were hissing breaths, low growls, sharp screeches, and a haunting vocalization similar to a wounded raccoon or a deer's warning call. The sounds grew closer as the weeks passed, circling the forested hills behind his cabin. Jack noticed something even stranger. When he focused on the noises or mentally called out to them, they seemed to respond, drawing nearer, as if something was acknowledging him. So by early December, the first snowfall blanketed the hills. One night around 10 p.m., Jack stepped onto the back patio and heard the sounds again, this time directly behind the cabin on the wooded slope. The security light cast a pale glow across the falling snow in the tree line. Then he saw them. Two red glowing eyes appeared in the darkness, fixed on him. Now, at first, he assumed he was watching a predator stalking prey. Then the eyes shifted and locked directly onto him. The large black mass surrounded them, barely visible against the night. And when one eye suddenly rose higher than the other, followed by the second, Jack realized the figure was standing upright. The thing began moving toward him, descending the hillside in a steady, deliberate path. He could hear it now. Heavy thumping footsteps crushed through the brush and uneven ground, growing louder with each step. The shape felt enormous, far larger than any animal he had ever encountered. The air around him seemed charged, as if it had been drawn its attention by acknowledging it. Now, as it closed within a few dozen yards, panic overtook him. Jack turned and ran, vaulting over a motorcycle in the yard and slamming into the house. He bolted upstairs, bursting into the room where his friends were playing video games. They laughed, assuming he had been frightened by wildlife. One of them glanced out the window and claimed he saw nothing more than drifting vapor in the cold air. To this day, Jack insists it was no animal. The memory of those rising red eyes and that massive form advancing through the snow had never left him. He has never tried to call whatever it was back into the open again. So from Loveland, we move northwest to Defiance, where one of Ohio's strangest and most controversial creature cases exploded into public view. This next encounter adds all the ingredients of folklore and absurdity, but also multiple witnesses, a physical assault, and even alarm to draw police attention. In the early morning hours of July 25th, 1972, railroad worker Ted Davis was completing a task of hooking air hoses between freight cars at the tracks of the Norfolk and Western Railroad depot in Defiance when he looked down and noticed two huge, hairy feet lying just in front of him. Looking up, he encountered a towering creature, estimated range from 6 to 9 feet, hunched forward, covered in hair with a vaguely canine face. In its hands, it held a large wooden board, likely a 2x4, which it then swung, striking Davis on the shoulder before turning and sprinting into the nearby brush. A follow-up sighting came on July 30th when Davis and a co-worker, Tom Jones, spotted the same creature lurking in the weeds near the tracks. Though it did not approach, its presence unnerved them. The beast seemed to hang on the edge of visibility, hunched, hairy, wearing what witnesses described as blue jeans and maybe a dark shirt. Now, in the days that followed, a third witness, a grocery store employee driving home late, claimed that a large dog-like creature ran across the road in front of his car around 4 a.m., matching earlier descriptions of the bipedal wolf-headed beast. Faced with mounting reports, Defiance Police Chief Donald Breckler eventually spoke publicly. "We didn't release it to the news media when we first got the reports, but now we're taking it seriously. We're concerned for the safety of our people." That creature became known in media and folklore as the Defiance Wolfman, or the Werewolf of Defiance. The descriptions were consistent. Bipedal upright humanoid canine hybrid, 6 to 9 feet tall, covered head to toe in dark fur or hair, large, hairy paws with claws, wearing blue jeans and a dark shirt, carrying a wielding a 2x4 or board. Active during pre-dawn hours near railroad tracks, yards, or highways. Curiously, none of the incidents occurred during a full moon, undermining the classical werewolf tropes. Despite the media attention, no one was ever captured, identified, or harmed beyond the initial strike on Davis. And as quickly as reports began, they tapered off by mid-August 1972, and the creature seemingly vanished. Now, in subsequent years, the legend has persisted in Northwest Ohio, spawning local lore and multiple retrospective articles and podcasts. Some investigators propose the creature may have been part of a broader Dogman phenomena, upright canine humanoid creatures reported in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Ohio. But skeptics argue that the most plausible explanation is a prankster in a costume, noting the location's proximity to the city core, lack of physical evidence, and the oddity of genes in a board rather than a natural weapon. Chief Breckler leaned toward the disguised human. Now, while the mystery remains unsolved, for researchers of anomalous phenomena, the Defiance case stands out because it had multiple credible witnesses with rail workers and a driver. It triggered a police response and local news coverage. It included physical interaction, the board strike, rather than just mere distant sighting. It intertwines classic werewolf imagery with distinctive elements like the jeans, the board, the railroad yard setting. So now we turn to Mount Vernon, where a cluster of bizarre humanoid sightings surfaced within the same general time period. What makes these reports stand out is not just the appearance of the entities, but the consistency of the emotional and physical effects on the witnesses, including fear, sickness, shock, and confusion. So in the summer of 2018, there was a series of 3 unexplained humanoid sightings in Mount Vernon, Ohio area. And to this date, there has been no known explanation. Now, the first account was on August 17, 2018. And the witness stated, I had just gotten back to the parking lot down from Mount Vernon's Wolf Run Park. And when I turned on my lights to leave, I saw it in the woods. I felt like I was being followed my entire hike. And I got a little lost on the way since I was feeling super sketched out. So when I saw it, I was panicking and scared. It looked startled as my lights came on, making a strange gargling, scratching sound, and I felt super sick in my stomach. I don't really know what it was. Like, I thought it was just someone in the woods, but its eyes looked weird. It was smooth-skinned and naked. It seemed to vibrate in front of my eyes as I looked at it. So I pulled my phone out of my pocket and tried to take pictures, but it seemed to lag. I have an iPhone 6 Plus, and I know my battery is having issues, but I've never had anything like that happen. I slammed my car in reverse and got out of there as fast as I could. The noise it made still freaks me out, like it was a velociraptor from Jurassic Park. But it made me lightheaded, and I felt sick in a strange way I've never felt. Then there was a second humanoid report on July 31st, 2018. As I was driving home on July 31st, 2018 at 1:43 a.m. on Ohio State Route 13 North in Mount Vernon, Ohio, a 7 to 8 foot tall, skinny humanoid-like creature ran across the road out of the cornfield across into the soybean field from an east to west direction. I noticed the creature in my headlights at 50 to 75 feet away while traveling at 55 to 60 miles an hour. As it came out of the cornfield, I immediately let off the accelerator, at first thinking it was a deer, but then I saw the creature walking upright. It was 7 to 8 feet tall with a tall, slender body, small diameter arms and legs, hands and feet that looked oversized for its body proportions, a small neck, an oval and elongated head, a dark tan to light brown skin tone, and no body hair. The creature turned its head slightly towards my vehicle's headlights, and I saw its black eyes and a small, slightly open mouth as it continued to run across the road. It barely took 2 to 3 steps, and it was across the road at a tremendous rate of speed. I was in total shock and thought I should check it out at first, but then thought better of it, and being uncertain of what I had just seen, I had better get out of the area. I lost sight of the entity due to the darkness. I'm a 24-year-old United States Air Force retired aircrew veteran with a top secret security clearance. Not to be totally bliss, but would someone please advise me on what I saw, because it still truly frightens me. So another report came the witness's daughter contacted me on September 13, 2018. Hi, I'm reaching out to let you know that I recently received a phone call from my mom in Mount Vernon, Ohio, who told me that she saw a figure that appeared to be an alien coming through one side of her basement and go out the other. She described it as tall with long arms, and she didn't see its face while watching it from the side. I wish to have her identity anonymous, please, if she is not contacted. I thought you might be interested to know that there have been other sightings in the area. My mom said she wasn't scared, felt no danger from this presence, but it just came and left. Thank you. And that was the last report I saw, and the last report that I had read or heard from anyone. So I don't know if this thing is still there or what's going on, but I haven't heard a thing since then. Next is a report from Hillsboro, and this one is pure nightmare fuel. It's brief, direct, and vivid, and kind of roadside sighting that leaves no time for reflection in the moment and no easy explanation afterward. So the witness tells me, hi, back in 2014, I came across something I had never seen before, and to this day, I still have no idea what it was. I remember that day as if it were yesterday. It was summer, and the evening was hot and sticky. My best friend Kim and I were on our way to Winchester, Ohio. She had been dating a boy, and they broke up a few days earlier. We were going to his house to exchange property, and I was there to make sure everything went smoothly. Now, after we exchanged property, we headed back to my town, Hillsboro. Winchester was about an hour away, so it was getting dark. We were on the back roads listening to music and just jamming out. We were, I am assuming, halfway home when we were coming over a hill. Night had fallen, and on the left side of the car was long grass. It was super long, like taller than me. As we reached the top of the hill, we saw a black figure emerge from the long grass. At first, we thought it was some random animal since we were in the middle of nowhere. But as we got closer, we realized that it wasn't. The figure was on all fours, crawling on its hands and knees. I know that if it had stood up, it would have been at least 6'4", maybe taller. When our headlights hit it, we got a better look, and it turned its head and looked at us. It was completely black and shiny, like it had been dipped in tar. Its eyes were round and milky white, and its mouth was full of sharp teeth. I remember my blood ran cold, and Kim asked me what that was, but I didn't know. She asked me what we should do. I had a strange feeling that if we stopped the car, something bad would happen, so I told her to floor it and not stop. And as we got closer, it turned around and went back into the long grass. We had never spoken about it since. Now, ever since I saw it, I've been trying to rack my brain trying to figure out what this was. I had done research and found nothing. And just thinking about it sends chills down my spine. Any idea what we saw? I have no idea, but it was probably a crawler. I mean, we've gotten these things in all different colors and shapes and sizes, so that's my best assumption. Now, our next account takes us to Toledo, where multiple witnesses described a huge winged humanoid moving over the city on the 4th of July. This is the kind of testimony that matters because it wasn't isolated. Several people saw the same thing, and the lingering fear afterward may be just as important as the sighting itself. The witness says it's true. I saw Mothman, and not recently, not one of those recent sightings that people are talking about. They were talking about Chicago. That is what made me decide to go ahead and talk about it, because this is so embarrassing. I mean, you go around telling people that you've seen a half human, half moth, or whatever it is, and they tend to look at you like you're nuts. But I saw it. This was back in 2008 on the 4th of July in Toledo, Ohio, which is northwest Ohio, right in the corner of the Michigan line, like right on the Ohio-Michigan border. Okay, so we had just finished watching the fireworks. All the cars were leaving, so we decided to sit back and wait for them to go, so we wouldn't have to fight the traffic and could hang out with the family in a little bit longer. My boyfriend at the time was lying on the blanket on his back, just kind of looking up into the stars, hanging out. But after a while, he looked up and he was like, hey, you guys, what the hell is that? So I was the first one to pay attention to him, and I looked up and there was like this plane going by. And I'm like, it's a plane. What are you talking about? He's like, no, that. And there was this huge black mass that clearly blocked the light from the stars as it flew by, but it moved slowly. I do remember that like it was slowly flying, but not like a bird. A bird has to fly fast. This thing was super slow and huge. Like, think of how big you would think of a pterodactyl being. That's how big this thing was. It had wings that were like really thin, like a pterodactyl's wings. What stuck out to me and the most was the wings, like how thin and see-through they kind of were. Like they weren't see-through, but like pterodactyl wings. And the body was like stubby, but not short, because trust me, this thing was huge. But it was stubby, kind of like a gargoyle. That's what reminded me of a gargoyle with pterodactyl wings. I don't know. This thing was weird. It was just weird. So I brought it up to my mom's attention. My mom saw it. My brother saw it. It was funny because we all did the same exact thing, like, it's a plane. What are you guys talking about? I looked at my mom over, and she said, it's a plane. I said, no, Mom. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what this was, but for some reason, seeing it made me feel terrified, and it stuck with me. That fear struck me. And if you think about it, it's kind of irrational because there's no real reason to fear it. It was not coming towards us. It was just flying. It could have been something else, but I know it wasn't, because I saw with my own eyes, but everyone tried telling me that it was. Like, oh no, it could have been Mothman. It couldn't have been the Mothman because it's not Point Pleasant. That's in West Virginia. This is Ohio. Okay, people in Michigan are seeing it now. And I'm ecstatic that they're reporting it because it validates what I've been trying to tell people. Now, nobody wanted to believe it, but now people are actually coming forward and reporting it, and that was something I never did. I didn't even know you could or knew how. What do you do? Who do you call to report something like that? Do you call the cops? Oh, there's some sort of weird, mothy, human-like thing flying through the sky. Like, no, I barely even wanted to tell my friends, let alone report it. How do you report something like that? But apparently there's a way, since people are reporting it. But there was one time I told someone this story, and it helped me feel validated as well. I went to tell someone about it when I was drunk, because it was the only thing I could admit to. And before I could even tell him what I saw, I was talking about how I saw something and that it was on the 4th of July. That's all I said. And he said, flying? And I was like, yeah, He's like, in the sky, like a human flying thing? I'm like, yeah. He's like, I saw it. I was there. He said he was at his friend's house, and when I saw it, I was just flying towards the woods where it was just flying toward the woods where he was. He was in the woods. He said once it got to the tree line, which would have been out of my sight, that it kind of turned and like swooped down and flew within 20 foot of them. They were sitting across a bonfire, and this thing just flew right past them, and they didn't get a real good look, but they did get a good enough look to see that it was human looking and it had wings. And when they were trying to explain it to the other people that were at the fire, they didn't get a chance to see it. They all thought that they were just drunk and crazy and didn't believe them either. So that's my story. I say Mothman. It was actually a mass sighting. A lot of people, including everyone I was with, saw it. The people at the bonfire saw it. There are probably other people there at the fireworks that night who saw it. And to my knowledge, none of us reported it. It was not even reported. If it had been reported, it wouldn't have been like in the reports with all these other people, but apparently it wasn't. I mean, it's not like an awesome, scary story. I didn't see it up close. It didn't swoop down and fly away right in front of me. But I was close enough to know that it was not natural. It was not normal. It was not something that I've ever seen before in my life, or I'm pretty sure most other people have ever seen before in their lives. There are things out there that we just don't understand, and that's truth. I know what I saw. I'm putting it out there. This is me reporting it. This is my report. I saw Mothman, and I'm glad to get it off my chest. Now, something I forgot to mention. For some reason, this left me with a fear that wouldn't go away for weeks. I couldn't sleep because every time I closed my eyes, I would see this thing. I had nightmares of it landing on my roof or looking in my windows. And even though I knew this fear was irrational, it wouldn't leave. It was strange that just seeing it would leave me so terrified for no reason. Now, I have to tell you, now this was 2008, and there have, as you know, when we started looking into this phenomenon in Chicago or in the Chicagoland area, we were getting other reports of sightings in Michigan, Ohio, and other parts of Indiana. These winged humanoids and pterodactyl-like beings have been reported in the upper Midwest and in the Rust Belt areas for decades. It just so happens that when, all these sightings started within 250 miles of Chicago, then, everybody was interested in it. Then these other reports came out, and that's what happened here. Now, after that, we shift from creature encounters to something that may be just as disturbing. A quiet suburban home in Medina County becomes the setting for a bizarre episode involving strange radio interference, an unexplained black van, and a pale, silent intruder in the backyard. Hello, sir. I found your name while searching Google. Something happened to me that I just can't explain, and I'll admit I'm scared. My wife and I live in Medina County, Ohio, in the greater Cleveland metro area. We lived there for about 5 years in a 2-story house in a residential division. Last Thursday evening, I was working at my desk when I heard strange gibberish coming from the local FM radio channel. I initially thought it was interference, but then it started to sound like a conversation. The language was not recognizable, and there was an odd humming sound in the background. And this continued for about 10 minutes, but then stopped. Later that night, while I was in the living room, the gibberish started again. This time it was much clearer. It sounded like the parties were arguing, but I'm just speculating. Then last Friday, something very unusual occurred. We had just finished dinner around 7 p.m. when we noticed a shadow from outside go across the dining room window. I looked out the window but didn't see anything. So I looked out the front door window and saw a plain black van parked on the street in front of our house. Then I heard my wife yell from the kitchen that someone was in the backyard. I rushed to the kitchen and turned on the security lights. Standing on the far side of the patio was a strange looking man dressed in heavy black bodysuit and wearing a black cap. There were no markings on the suit or cap. I immediately noticed that he had a young looking face but was very pale with large ears. He was holding what looked like a PC tablet device that would emit an occasional beep. I opened the door and asked him what he was doing. He looked at me with a blank stare, then started walking back toward the side of the house. I followed him back to the front of the house and to the black van. I asked him several times who he was and why he was there. I never received a response. He quickly got into the van and drove away. I called the police and filed a report. The officer said that he was unaware of any similar activity. I examined the yard earlier the next morning and I didn't see anything out of place. I talked to the neighbors, but they never noticed anything unusual. I haven't slept well since that night. This incident is unnerving to us. I have heard of some Men in Black accounts, but I don't particularly find much interest in the subject. Can you explain what, if anything, is going on? Thank you for your time. Well, I get these reports a lot. It's usually somebody dressed in black, but not necessarily looking like the typical men in black. But over the years, the outfits have changed somewhat, become more modern. But the fact that he was in the yard, not talking, not responding to the homeowner, and was driving a black van, got in, didn't say a word, and the cops not knowing anything about it, well, that's kind of disconcerting. And I told this witness if it happened again to let me know, but I hadn't received any more updates on this, so I don't know what happened. We now return to northwestern Ohio for a chilling campsite encounter near Lake Erie. Two brothers, one terrifying night, and a pair of upright canine entities that seemed to surround, track, and possibly mark their territory around the tent. Hi, this event occurred in northwestern Ohio in the summer of 2018. I was camping with my brother along Lake Erie near Pickerel Creek Wildlife Area just west of our home in Sandusky. So that first night, we went to sleep early. I woke up around 2:30 a.m. to take a leak. My brother was fast asleep. The moon was almost full that night, so it gave me plenty of light to see everything outside the tent. There weren't many bushes in the area around our campsite, so I didn't have to worry or be afraid of something hiding and waiting to sneak up on me. I was walking away from our camp when I saw something that scared the crap out of me not far from me. There were two dog-like creatures just standing there staring at me. And when I say standing, I mean on two legs. I freaked out. I ran back to the tent. I heard what sounded like they were chasing after me and making strange noises. Not so much a dog or wolf sound, but more something like a human. It was the scariest sound I'd ever heard. I was too afraid to turn around. I thought they would pounce on me at any second, but that never happened. When I did make it back to the tent, I dove in it. I scared the crap out of my brother, who asked what was going on. I told him what had just happened. He gave me a strange look, then laughed and told me to shut up. I told him if he didn't believe me, go out there himself and see. He laughed again and said, sure thing. I have to go anyway. So I sat there and I watched him stand up and head out the tent. I knew that this was serious and I couldn't let him go out there by himself. So I followed him out of the tent and into the darkness. Now, my eyes took a few seconds to adjust, but I could see him standing about 20 yards away, staring off at trees. I walked over to him and looked in that direction too. We were staring into the pitch black woods, but then as my eyes adjusted, I could see something in the shadows. It was part dog, part man creature. It didn't move or growl. It just stood there upright looking at us. The dog part, the upper half, looked like a German shepherd, but with yellow eyes and a dog-like head. The human part started about mid-torso downward. It was standing there on two legs like a man. The upper part was hairy like a dog, but the bottom half was hairless like a human. I whispered to my brother and asked what he thought it was. He said nothing. He was literally paralyzed with fear and shock. I grabbed him and pulled him back to the tent. And as we ran back, the creature let out a horrific howl. The sound of that thing echoed through the trees. It was like nothing I'd ever heard before. We dove into the tent and piled our backpacks and gear in front of the entrance as if we were offering ourselves protection. We were both absolutely terrified. He was shaking, and I felt like I had to throw up. I asked him what we should do now, and he said that he didn't know, but if this thing got into our tent, it would kill us for sure. Then we heard a dog howl in the distance, and we felt relieved, even though I knew it might have been a second creature I had encountered earlier. Then another howl answered closer to us, like right outside the tent. It had followed us. We then heard scratching and digging sounds. We were both screaming hysterically at that point. Then it stopped, and there was nothing but silence. We waited inside the tent for at least 15 minutes, hoping that it had left. We decided to take the risk and peek out the tent. I grabbed the flashlight and peeked through the flap. I saw nothing. I waited a bit longer, then looked out at the campsite. There was nothing there. We decided to stay put in the tent until daylight. There was no way we were going to walk through the dark woods towards my car in an attempt to escape these creatures. After what seemed like forever, the morning light started creeping through the forest canopy. We both slowly exited the tent and looked around us. There were large canine and human-like prints all around the campsite, especially in a circle around the tent. We quickly gathered our gear and started hiking toward my car, which was parked in a lot about a half mile away. And when we reached the car, the first thing I noticed was a terrible stench. I didn't know what it was, but the odor was very strong. It was so strong that we could smell it even after we got in and drove off. My brother believes that the creatures may have found the car and marked it as theirs. I wasn't sure if that was true, but the stench lingered in the car for days. Now, when I got home after dropping my brother off at his apartment, I started looking online for answers. I read several accounts about Dogman sightings throughout Ohio, but none were from the area where we had been. Now, this was 5 years ago. My brother and I still enjoy the outdoors, but we have not returned to that area again, and we both are more aware of our surroundings when hiking and camping. But we just don't talk about the encounter with each other anymore. Now, the next report blends the Bigfoot mystery with something even stranger. Deep in the woods of southeast Ohio, a hunter hears heavy footsteps approaching him and sees leaves moving, but sees no visible source. It's a case that pushes the question beyond flesh and blood into something much more harder to define. The witness says, I live in southeast Michigan and in northern Macomb County, but used to hunt in Tar Hollow State Forest in southeast Ohio from 2000 to 2008. On the last hunt of one of our trips, I decided to go all the way down to the bottom of the hollow and check it out. I was told the wind swirls in the bottoms and it's better to stay out of them. There were so many big buck signs down there that I couldn't help myself. I didn't have a tree to set up for my saddle, so I had my climber on my back. I set it up, climbed up 16 to 20 foot or so, pulled my bow up, and started my last hunt of the 10-day trip. Now, as the evening set in, the wind settled down to almost nothing. I heard what I thought was a deer coming toward me. Mind you, it was wide open hardlands, and I could see at least 100 yards in every direction. There was a very thick bed of dead leaves on the forest floor. They were very loud to walk through, even for a deer. And as the deer approached, I heard very loud footsteps getting closer. It sounded like a person walking through the leaves, not a four-legged deer. The thought of Sasquatch was not on my radar at the time, and I was a mile and a half from any road. So the chances of being a person were slim. I thought for sure a deer would come into view at any second. The sound was now right next to my tree. Well, it didn't show itself. I was straining to see whatever was making the noise without moving so much as to not get busted if it was a big buck. I could see the leaves moving as whatever this was walking. Now, how insane is that? I could see the leaves moving where this had been walking, but there was nothing to see, just crunch, crunch, crunch. I didn't know what to do. I was kind of freaking out. Whatever it was kept on going, and the sound of crunching leaves got quieter and quieter until it was obviously far enough away that I couldn't hear it anymore. I went in the same direction that I had taken to get there. I stayed in my stand for another half hour and finally managed to muster up the courage to get down and get out of there before it was pitch black out. The entire walkout was the most terrifying moment of my life. I told my dad and my buddy Candy what happened, and they later just blew it off. I can't blame them, as they didn't experience it. I had one strange thing happen previous to that incident. I was around 9 years old. My Uncle Kelly and I were walking up to the gas station at the corner of Baker Road and 23 Mile Road in New Baltimore, Michigan. This is back when Baker Road was all dirt. It's now a subdivision. Anyhow, there is an S-curve in the road because the Salt River runs next to the road. As we round to the last part of the S-curve, we're now in the half-mile-long straightaway that would take us to the trail that cuts through the fields to get to the gas station. I looked up and crossed the road right above where the trail to the store was. I saw two upright, all-black people. I would say walking left to right across the big road. One was tall, one was short. They spotted us and stopped in the middle of the road, spun around, and went back the way they came. The only thing was that the little one dropped on all fours and ran back as the tall one stayed up on two legs. This freaked me out bad. I thought my uncle was messing with me by having a couple of his friends do this to scare me, but he swore up and down that that wasn't the case. We never made it to the store. We turned around and went back to my grandparents' house. Another time I was hunting on our deer lease in the thumb of Michigan. I was 22 years old. I believe there were acorns hitting me while I was in the tree stand. They were coming at an arching angle, as if they were being thrown. I didn't think much of it until I heard everyone else's story. I still hunt to this day, although I may wait until I get a little before setting. I can see a little before setting out. Going out early and sitting an hour in the dark isn't an option for me anymore. Now, as we close the report sequence with another winged humanoid account, this time from a truck driver on a dark Ohio roadway. What begins as a near collision turns into a face-to-face encounter with a bat-winged being that reportedly rose from the road and flew away. So the witness says, I had an encounter with a winged creature myself and even posted the story of what happened to a group on Facebook that talked about things. I'm 32 years old and I had never seen a supernatural alien until last summer. I've always been and still am a skeptic, and to this day I try to convince myself that what I saw was actually a really big hawk or something, but I know I'm lying to myself. It was around 3:45 a.m. and I was driving west on 322 towards Chesterland, Ohio. I'm driving a Freightliner box truck with a load of newspapers. In the summertime of 2016 at night, there's always a layer of fog hanging down around the ground, and the moon was bright and the stars were out. Now, going around 50 miles an hour through the hills, I see the dark figure in the moonlight that was coming right at me. It looked huge, so I slammed the brakes and actually ducked down instinctively because I was driving right toward it at windshield level. I heard a big thud, as the figure went over the cab and smacked into the flat aluminum box behind the cab at about 40 miles an hour. I kept my foot on the brake and came to a stop on the side of the road, probably about 75 yards from where the impact happened. Wondering if it had smashed into the top of the box, I got out and looked around. Now, the box wasn't smashed in, so I walked around to the back of the truck, and that's when I saw it in the moonlight, almost as clear as day. This thing was huge. I thought for sure it was dead, but all of a sudden it rolled over, and that's when I saw its bat-like wings, not bird-shaped. It rolled over, stood on two legs, and was at least 6 foot tall. The thing looked right at me in its red-orange eyes, and I was literally frozen in fear. I couldn't move at all. Then it spread its huge wings, jumped up, and flew off. I ran back to the truck and took off towards Chesterland as fast as I could and spent the rest of the night on edge and trying to rationalize what I had just seen. Now, the closest thing I can describe it to is the Jeepers Creepers monster, but I wasn't that close to see its facial features in much detail. Just a 6 foot tall bat-winged man with orange-red eyes. Now, I do that route from work every week, and every time I go through that stretch of 322, I get uneasy. It freaks me out to this day. Now, Ohio has always been a fertile ground for Fortean mystery. But when you put these encounters together, a large pattern begins to emerge. We are not looking at a single phenomenon confined to a single town or legend. We are looking at a wide spectrum of anomalies: upright canines, winged humanoids, pale humanoid intruders, cloaked or invisible entities, and other forms that seem to appear briefly, terrify witnesses, and then vanish. Now, what stands out most is the human response. Again and again, witnesses describe overwhelming dread, physical sickness, shock, sleeplessness, and the feeling that they've encountered, that what they encountered was not simply an unknown animal. Whether these cases represent cryptids, ultra-terrestrials, interdimensional manifestations, unidentified beings, or something else entirely, they continue to leave a very real mark on the people who experience them. Ohio remains one of the most active and fascinating regions for these reports, and I have little doubt that more witnesses are still out there. Now, if you've experienced anything like this and had an unexplained encounter with anything or a sighting, you can mail it or contact me at Phantoms and Monsters. And as always, thank you for listening. So let's start the questions and answers. All caps, please. Winnie Nisi, thank you for the donation. Much appreciated. Sir Wolf, hi Lon. What's your best guess as to what these crawlers are? Part human, maybe. I don't know what they are. Honestly, I wrote a book and I have no idea. I still have no idea what it is. I hear all types of iterations of what these descriptions of these things. And are they an ultra-terrestrial type being? Probably. Do they live on our Earth plane all the time? I doubt it. They just seem like fleeting beings, very much like what the winged humanoid sightings are. I mean, are they related to them? They very well could be. But that's my best guess, and that's exactly what it is, a guess. I have no idea what these things are. Dagnabbit, what part of Ohio has melon heads? I don't think I've gotten them. I think there has been melonhead reports, but I can't remember exactly where in Ohio. I know there have been some in Michigan. Now, is that related to anything we talked about? I don't know. I don't know if it is or not. I mean, the whole melonhead thing, it kind of reminds me of the movie itself. And, is that really something that happened? But I don't know. I don't know what it is, to be honest with you. Dagnammit, the Huron River Monster in Milan, Ohio has both horns and tentacles on its head. Okay. I had never heard of that. So if you have anything you want to share, please send it to me. I'll look it up and dig up as much as I can. But it's never been reported to me. Howie Staring, Alon, do you have any Deer Man reports lately? Not really Deer Man. I've had a few. I had one that was probably a not deer, but it looked more human than what a not deer would look like. It actually had a human face to it. I forget where that was exactly, but it was a report that I had received, and I do occasionally get something like that, but it's usually what people consider a not deer. It wasn't standing on two legs; it was quadrupedal. Anything else, folks? Again, if you have any reports that you want to offer to me, feel free to contact me, and I'll go from there. Just let me know as much you know, and I'll start digging. Okay, folks. Well, again, thanks again for coming. Stay aware, stay safe, and as always, keep looking into the unexplained. Have a nice evening. Have a great weekend. See you next Friday, and good night.